I'm going to give it to them. In December 1962, Queen Elizabeth II watched a 222-minute version of Lawrence of Arabia. 3 weeks later, that version disappeared forever. Producer Sam Spiegel secretly cut 20 minutes to squeeze in extra showings. Each minute he removed made him $50,000 richer. For 27 years, audiences watched a butchered film without knowing it. The missing scenes didn't just change the story. They hid the real Lawrence, a man so brutal that test audiences walked out in horror. Today we reveal what Hollywood buried for profit. In early 1960, the Lawrence of Arabia project almost collapsed before a single frame was shot. The first version of the script had been written by Michael Wilson, blacklisted writer hired quietly by producer Sam Spiegel. But when director David Lean read Wilson's draft in Jordan, he walked out in protest. He said the script was impossible to shoot. His exit left a fully paid crew stranded in the desert, and Columbia Pictures threatened to pull its support unless a new version was written fast. In desperation, Spiegel turned to Robert Bolt, a respected playwright who had never written for film. Bolt agreed, but warned that he would need to rebuild the story from the ground up. Lean came back to London, and the two worked around the clock. By day Bolt wrote, by night he and Lean discussed every page over drinks and long conversations. The rewritten pages were then flown across the desert to the crew before each sunrise, a process they nicknamed camel mail. Within weeks, nearly all of Wilson's work was gone. By November 1962, Wilson admitted that less than 10% of his original dialogue had survived. What was once called the script that wouldn't cross the sand became the foundation of one of the greatest films ever made. But rewriting the script was just one crisis. The financial risk was another. The entire production cost about $15 million, the most expensive British film. At that time, Columbia agreed to distribute it, but left the day-to-day spending to Spiegel, meaning he personally covered every overrun. In the middle of the Jordanian desert, Spiegel sat in a makeshift office under generator lights, signing dozens of payment slips each night. He hired over 1,000 Bedouin extras, 300 camels, and 150 horse handlers under his own name. Crew members started calling the project Spiegel's folly, but the gamble paid off. The movie earned more than $46 million in worldwide rentals, clearing Spiegel's debt in just 15 months. Before any of this, David Lean had hit a wall. After the success of The Bridge on the River Cay in 1957, he spent 2 years trying to get a film about Gandhi off the ground, but nothing came of it. Lean later said the failure left him ready to quit filmmaking. Then Sam Spiegel called. He pitched Lean the idea of a film set in the desert, not just about Lawrence but about the desert itself as a mirror of the man's mind. That concept reignited Lean's interest. He became obsessed with turning heat haze into a dramatic element. For one shot, the entrance of Sheriff Ali, he used a 482mm lens to compress the shimmering desert into a single distant figure, and it took 4 days to capture. Several camera motors were destroyed in the process, but when Lean saw the final image, he knew he had something special. That moment killed all talk of retirement. Behind the scenes, Columbia executives had their own doubts. While Lean and Bolt were rewriting, the studio worried that the film's slow pace and serious tone would fail in the American market. So they quietly hired 2 uncredited writers to create an alternate version. Their script added a fictional American character, a love story, and a patriotic flag-waving finale. The rewrite was mailed to Jordan in September 1961. Lean read it, called it Hollywood tripe, and ripped it up in front of the entire crew. Bolt later said he never wrote a single line involving romance and thanked Lean for keeping the desert pure. The gaffers jokingly labeled the discarded draft Operation Sabotage. The pages were forgotten until decades later when they were uncovered in Columbia's archives. Casting wasn't easy, either. When Peter Owl's screen test landed in front of Columbia executives in February 1961, they dismissed him as a pretty boy without screen presence. David Lean exploded at the suggestion. The studio wanted Cary Grant, who was 57, but Lean insisted Odell was the right choice. He quietly ordered a second screen test, all yelling lines from 7 Pillars, while firing a Webley revolver. That version reached Hollywood overnight, and the reply came quickly. The studio chief said, "The kid terrifies me. He stays." Odell was hired for £15,000, 1/12 of what Grant had demanded. Before Odell, there had been talks with Marlon Brando. In late 1960, Brando's agent asked for $1 million and 10% of the gross. At the time, it was an unheard of sum. Brando had just become the first actor to earn $1 million for Mutiny on the Bounty and was now trying to double down. Spiegel refused. Brando called him a Hollywood parasite and mailed a postcard from Tahiti that read, "Too hot in the desert, try Fiji." And with that, the talks ended. The demand set a new record, but Brando never joined the film. On set, the tension didn't stop. Anthony Quinn arrived in ABBA in July 1961 and discovered that his role as Ada Abu Tai had been cut dramatically to make more space for Omar Sharif's character. Furious, Quinn told Lean he would leave unless his big monologue, the one about his 23 wounds, was restored. Lean compromised. Quinn got to keep his speech and gained a dramatic close-up, while Sharif kept the iconic entrance across the Mirage. Their feud lasted months. Crew members began calling their camel caravans the Quinn-ometer because tempers flared every time a scene shifted focus away from Ada. Not all doubts were shouted. Alec Guinness, who played Prince Faisal, kept his worries quiet. Letters he wrote in 1962, only published decades later, reveal he was deeply uncomfortable with the idea of wearing brown face. He feared the makeup would make him look like a wax caricature. Still, he took the role for £100,000 and stayed silent in public. In private, he begged Lean to light him softly, to make him ghost-like rather than exaggerated. His concerns about representation came years before such conversations reached mainstream Hollywood. Claude Rains had just 2 weeks to prepare. On August 1, 1961, he was vacationing in New Hampshire when Robert Newton, the actor originally cast as Dryan, died of a heart attack. Rains was flown to Jordan immediately. He hadn't read the book, didn't know the script, and had only fragments of dialogue taped inside his tar-ouch. He learned most of his lines while bouncing through the desert in a jeep, reading pages taped to the dashboard. For hours after arriving, he was in costume and in front of the camera. On December 10, 1962, something strange happened in London. Queen Elizabeth II arrived at the Odeon, Leicester Square, for the royal premiere of Lawrence of Arabia. The version she watched that night ran for 222 minutes, nearly 4 hours. It was exactly what director David Lean had delivered. Nothing was cut. Nothing was trimmed. This was his full vision shown for the first time. But just a few weeks later, that version vanished. Producer Sam Spiegel quietly told Lean to shorten the film. 20 minutes were removed, bringing the runtime down to 202 minutes. Most people didn't even notice. Newspapers kept printing the original 222-minute length.